Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Catheta webinar live on October 13th. For those who don't already know, Catheta means learning and green. In that respect, today we'll be learning about if you get money, you know how to manage it from Rosa McNally. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center, and we're also thrilled that you could join us today. If you could please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Please also note the copyright law. The materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws and treaties. Just something to keep in mind. And before we get started, I want to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment works. If you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. With that icon, you can raise your hand, you could agree, you could disagree, you could step away. And now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you'll see a box that says Files. Over to the right of that, you'll see a box that says Web Links. This is where you'll find our survey about today's webinar, along with any other links that can be seen throughout today's presentation. I've also included a link there that is a recording of Rosa's previous webinar. This was done last week, and it was about the wonderful things that you could do with the various grants. So if you're somebody who's here today and you missed that first segment at some point, go ahead and watch that recording, and you will get even more of this valuable knowledge. Finally, to the right, we have a chat box available. So this is how you'll communicate with the instructor and the NLC staff. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interact by using the chat box. Just type your message and hit enter, or click the up arrow icon button to submit. We do encourage class participation, so please feel free to write in those questions or comments. And if you're having any tech support issues, you can also submit those to the chat box. Know that most of the tech issues could be solved by just exiting and then re-entering the meeting room. But let's go ahead and all try out the chat box together by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation, please. And while y'all do that in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Rosa McNally. And Rosa, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you now.
Okay, thank you so much, Brooke. I am really happy to be back here again. And as she stated, my name is Rosa McNally, and I live in northern Maine. I have a Boston accent, and no, I'm not from Boston. And if I say wicked a lot, that can mean that it's just really good or it's really bad, but it's something that you will hear me use quite frequently. I am a single mom of a son and a daughter, and I got a wicked special grandson that's 14 years old. I'm not quite 5 feet, and he's 6 feet, so he loves just hanging and hovering over me. I got quite a background that's really diverse in grant writing, and I hope that I inspire you to continue along your path. And I learned how to write grants by administering grants that were out of compliance, and I was left in quite a situation with the state of Maine. I live up in northern Maine, and I had to clean that up. Well, when you clean up a mess, then you learn what the regulations are and what was supposed to have been done. I'd also like to say that I work for the Holton Band of Maliseet Indians. They're a tribe in Holton, Maine, and I've worked for them for almost 16 years. And then I have a consulting business on the side. I'd like to say that I have a background in municipal government as far as being in economic and community development. And I've worked for job training and education centers as an executive director. And I have over 20 years working with Native American tribes, which is my absolute favorite. I am a person that believes in outcomes and finding unmet needs and what can we do to help fill them. And so even in this capacity of the training, I hope that if you've got a question, you can ask me today. I'll do the best I can to answer it. If you want to reach out to me afterwards, my contact information will be provided. And if I can help you be successful and your tribe achieve the goals that you want to, you can. And I believe this enough so that I even beyond my business and my full-time job, I will still reach out. I used to serve on our local town government as a counselor. And so I know what the budget is. I've served on the budget review board. And so when you realize what the unmet need is, you just start searching for grants, see what you can do to help. And it's incredibly rewarding. So when we start this today, one of the things that I want to give you as a disclosure, we had a lot of fun last week, and it was exciting because you can see all the outcomes of what this program can do. And we are very fortunate in Indian country to be able to have these grants, again, because of my background with municipalities. This sort of funding is not really available. So what we can get for funds for ICDBG, a state here in Maine anyway, they would be comparable what's called just the CDBG, and it's about $300,000, and that's it. And so you know yourself, you can't get very much done with that. So today we're going to still try to have fun, but it's information that you need to know, and hopefully it's reaching people who are really new into writing grants, or maybe you're new into writing this grant and what to look for. So I have had significant success with ICDBG and some with IHBG. And it is so imperative to pay very, very, very close attention. So there is a lot of information that you're going to get anyway when you look at your NOFA, which is your Notice of Funding Availability. And I will tell everybody, read that, read that, read that. In that we're not going to go into registering with SAMS.gov. I'm not going to tell you every form it is that you need to fill out. Basically for the next 5 weeks, we're going to go through what those 5 rating factors are. And I'm going to give you a few examples, and they're kind of bizarre in some ways. And I did that deliberately. I have reviewed grants before. I have also been a peer reviewer. And sometimes what happens is people get confused with needing something so bad, and they give a history of how the tribe became federally recognized and some of the horrible things that have happened to them, but you're not talking about the actual need of why you're applying for this grant. Or they make it very simplistic, and it's that we need it so bad. If they're going to fund this, and we deserve this because of our need. You're going to have to respond to the need based on how HUD is going to score you. So please don't copy any of the information here. When I've given you a little bit of examples, this is one of the things that I have found through the trainings that I have taken, and I still take trainings. Every time I can take a training, because it can make a difference of 2 points. I always learn from another tribe of what it is they're doing, and you will too. And so some of the examples are kind of bizarre to make it a little bit fun, but it's also from experience of me reading some of the applications like, oh, wow, they really need some help here. A lot of the information too, when it comes to the actual language that came out of what HUD developed for their training, and it's coming directly from the NOFA. So I want to make sure that I disclose that to you and give credit there. Otherwise, this is information that I have developed. So when we were ready to start, and before we started, I wanted to ask a question. And Brooke, I'm thinking of another question too so we're going to ask the first one that we had identified, but I'd also like to know how many repeat visitors do we have here today after we ask this question? Okay, you ready for me to step in, Brooke?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to take the polls down?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, perfect.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this. I always like to know who's in the audience. And so if you have already administered a grant, I think that that is one of the key elements for your level of success to be able to do this, to write the grant. That's how you're learning what's actually going to be done. And then you're finding out what the regulations really are. Like you can read the regulations and you can recite them, but then when you're actually putting them into practice, that's an entirely different ballgame. So congratulations to all of you that are participating. And again, please feel free to raise your hand during the presentation and ask some questions. That works well for me, and it's not offensive at all. So like I had said, you know, pay attention to your NOFA, what is in it, what has to be addressed. This presentation is not going to go through every single, it's going to go over the rating factors, but it's not going to go through every single thing that is saying. For example, we're not saying what that one-page summary is, but that's a requirement. You have to do that. It's an abstract of what it is your program is going to do, how much money you're applying for, what is the purpose going to be, what are your outcomes going to be, what is your leverage amount going to be, and add a table of contents for your whole proposal. On your attachments, try to make this as easy for the reader as possible. I always feel bad for whoever has to score the applications when you stop and think about all the work that you put into one application, but how many applications are they reading? And then again, going through trainings with HUD staff or whatever, and they're trying to find where your attachment is that you've made reference to, but it wasn't clear for them. And somebody else was downloading, printing, and putting it all together and doing the pre-screening, and maybe they didn't put it all in the right sequence of what it is you had it. But let's say you make reference in the body of your narrative and your needs sections, and you identify that you have deteriorations of units, and the whole purpose of what it is you're trying to achieve here is that you're going to rehab those units. And so you've taken pictures and you're going to demonstrate to them through those pictures how poorly the units are. So you're going to address that. You're not going to take a picture and copy and paste it and put it in the body of your narrative, but you're going to add it as an attachment. So you're going to make that a reference. So see attachment, rating factor 2, pictures. But then after you get all of your attachments all together sequentially the way you want them, then you're going to put what rating factor it is and what page number it is. So obviously you've got to go back to your narrative once you've got all your attachments done and say, okay, what page number is this? So that when I'm making reference to my attachment, that you've got the right page number. And you're just making it easier on the reviewer for sure, but you're also making it easier for yourself. So if you get the money, do you know how to manage it? The games begin. So a lot of us get confused as far as what this actually means. And if you're managing the grants, and you already know exactly what it is I'm talking about. If you're managing a program, you already know what it is I'm talking about, because you're probably the one that's managing it the most. You have a finance person that's trying to do it. You may have somebody that's procurement. And so now we're going to see how HUD's going to rate. Do you know how to manage it? And so through this session, we're going to learn about managerial and technical staff, your audit submissions and your findings, procurement, contract management, disbursements, timely reporting, closeout, monitoring findings. This is just so much fun. I'm sure you guys are sitting there with such great excitement on your faces. So managerial and technical staff, and this is worth 8 points. And so it says you must describe the project's specific roles and responsibilities and the knowledge and experience of all individual key staff and/or contractors in planning, managing, and implementing your projects in accordance with the implementation schedule for which funding is being requested. And you must also provide a capacity gap. So here I am sitting here and I'm reading to you what you're very capable of reading yourself. What does that mean? So I was really pleased. So there's 56% of you that are attending this right now that already administer grants. And so when you're thinking about this project, whatever it is you're writing, so yeah, you have the person that's going to administer the grants, who's going to do the financial accounting part, who's going to be responsible to make sure that the program meets compliance and procurement regulations. It can all be one person that may be doing, well, I doubt that they're going to be doing the financial accounting for it, but one person can carry out several of these activities. But are you actually saying that? Now, a lot of what you're doing with ICDBG predominantly is you're going to be doing housing rehab, you're going to be doing housing new construction, you're going to be building a new community facility. So who's going to be responsible for that on-site inspection? Is that going to be someone in your office? Is it going to be you? Are you going to just rely entirely on your architects and engineers? Are you going to be hiring somebody specifically for that job? Think your project through so that, because trust you me, they've researched enough, they've reviewed enough of these applications that they know how many staff or what their level of accountability should be to be able to manage this. And then also, how recent and relevant is their experience? So what is recent, relevant, and successful? So there says knowledge and experience will be judged in terms of recent, relevant, and successful experience. And for those of you who have written these grants before, I apologize for my notifications coming up here. We have heard this for years and years and years. And so I was like, yada, 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 yada. But recent, within the past 5 years, relevant. Okay, so you may have somebody that has worked for the tribe for several years, but their experience has nothing to do with what it is you're saying their part of this grant is going to be. Or if it is, toot that horn and make sure that you're saying it. Successful, experience producing specific accomplishments. So this is where I see the greatest level of weakness. So I've had tribes reach out to me after they not been awarded and asked me, hey, would you mind looking at this for me? And they'll send me a copy of their grant, and then they'll send me what their score sheet was from HUD. And it's like, I can't understand this. And this successful one to me is tricky because you can give so many specific qualifications of what this person has done. You can say they manage this, the low-income housing tax credit project. You know, they rehab 25 units. They've done this, they've done that, but you didn't say what the specific accomplishment was. So they rehabbed 56 units. Their project was on time. They were within budget. They closed out on time. To go on into specific what was successful instead of just saying what the project was, what was successful about that. So they're also telling us do not include job descriptions or resumes. An individual or contractor included in this sub-factor must meet the criteria for capacity. So I don't know how many people here contract out any of their services. I know sometimes people will contract out a project manager, a project administrator, their site, their financial part of it. They may contract that out with the tribe if their housing doesn't have it. Are you ready to ask that question? I see a poll come up.
Yep, I'm creating it right now.
Okay.
All right.
I love seeing how everybody does it. 50-50. So Brooke, would you ask another question to follow up with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know how you want to do this, but I'd like to know what type of services they're contracting out.
Okay. Okay, I can do that. Give me one second. I gotcha. All right, folks, here we go. So which services are you contracting out?
Okay, well, we'll just take it as that. So I can give you an example of some of the things like I had mentioned before. So contracting services out isn't going to be your professional services. You're going to have your professional services and you're going to identify that maybe in this category and it may be under your capacity gap. But again, you may not have the capacity with your staff to be able to manage it. So a lot of people will hire a grant administrator. They'll either contract that out or they'll hire a new position. Or it appears to me, well, 56% of participants here today write the grant and then administer it. So I'm really impressed by that.
You're starting to get some answers on that poll, Rosa, with who does contracting.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we're gonna give an example of, we're talking about the staff that's actually, when you get this money, you've been awarded, or you're trying to convince HUD that you have the capacity, you've got the staff that can do this. So they're gonna say that the project manager is Lily Bernstein. Lily was hired as a housing executive director 6 months ago and will be the grant administrator and primary project manager for this project. Lily was previously the intake receptionist for social services. She has worked for the tribe for 15 years, is a tribal member, and has invested her passion into the tribe and cares about the outcomes for our tribal citizens. Lily excels at creating databases and will be responsible for creating a database for this project. She will supervise the maintenance department and bookkeeper to ensure compliance within program guidelines and regulations. Well, Lily is not recent. So what's not good about this? She's not recent in her current position as a housing director. She hasn't been in the position for a year, nor with the tasks that they were describing about Lily, it didn't demonstrate even that she's the housing director. What is she doing? So did she create the did she do her Indian housing plan? Has she put her budgets together? Is she managing budgets? Did she have to manage budgets in her prior position? She's not showing any correlation of what it is that she had done that she's going to have to do in this position if you get that grant, and she's going to have to administer that grant. So this is something that I see, the next bullet that I'm going to mention, that many tribes get confused. Do not confuse the fact that because she has worked for the tribe for 15 years, that is recent or relevant. So we just went over that. It's not recent. She hasn't been in that position. So they want someone that's recent in the past 5 years. So she hasn't even been in it for a year, nor has she demonstrated any, and it's not relevant. So with what she was doing as an intake person for social services is not relevant to managing a construction grant. So, and she hasn't demonstrated any correlation between her former job and any transferable skills from that job to this job. So nothing indicates recent, relevant, and current with her experience. Lily's strength is creating and maintaining databases. And while that may help with tracking the progression of the project, it's not stated. And what is stated is not relevant to managing a rehabilitation or a new construction project. Nothing is identified that is specific to managing a project or program. It's not relevant. Nothing was stated identifying her success. They're not going to get points on that one. And Lily is really nice. So what's a better example? Sam Elliott. I choose Sam Elliott for my project manager. Sam has worked for the WHA for 7 years as a maintenance supervisor and construction project manager. Since 2021, as project manager, Sam has worked with architect and engineering firms, existing staff, and contractors to create and maintain the scope of work, budgets, change orders, pay recs, and manage the rehabilitation and new construction of 13 units. Sam is on site daily, inspects the progress of the work, and keeps the executive director and housing commissioners informed on the progress delays or challenges. Sam's experience is recent, relevant, and it's successful. Many of the 13-unit rehab units were entire makeovers. So this is continuing on with what Sam has done. Rebuilding the homes from the ground up, conversions of garages to bedrooms, installing handicap accessible bathrooms. Projects were successfully closed out, within budget and met the projected timelines. Since 2019, Sam has coordinated with the architect and engineering firm to develop 40 low-income housing tax credit units. Sam is a seasoned professional and has brought his skill set from the outside as a general contractor specializing in renovations and remodeling of single and multifamily homes, and applied these skills to the WHA maintenance department for construction and maintenance projects. So if it was up to you, if you were going to hire, would you hire Lily or would you hire Sam? If you're reviewing an application, which one of these, and when you're writing this, there's going to be a whole lot more that's being said about Sam. This is just like a little blurb to give you an example of the difference of how you would write that and how, but can you imagine when the reviewer is reading this, if you're the tribe that's got Lily and your heart's just beating fast and you're hoping so much you get this grant, but HUD's reading Lily and then they're looking over and they're looking at Sam, who do you think is going to get the 8 points? I like Lily, but I don't think she can manage this grant. Another way that you can demonstrate the success of the person or the people that are going to be involved is if you look at create a table. I've seen a lot of tables and I've used them too, especially because you have page limitations. So Sam Elliott, he was project manager, recent. So we're putting down the year, right? 2020, he was the ICDBG project manager, housing rehab, 30 rental units. 2019, he did a public facility for a 10,000 square foot hotel rehab. 2018, so boom, you're bolding all of those, and everything that you can see there is recent. Very easy for the reader to write. Relevant. I just put in here the project is similar in scope, but you can be more specific in here. To say specifically that this is similar to the scope we're rehabbing. Maybe you're rehabbing 20 more units or whatever. But it was successful. 30 units were rehabbed. Project was on schedule, within budget, and closed out within the time schedule. So, excuse me. Who are your staff going to be? When they're asking about staff, it's not just your project manager. You're going to have a finance person. So you want to explain which projects they work on. Do they manage your IHBGs? I'm going to see what I can do about that. I apologize. Do they manage your IHBGs? I'm losing my screens here. I'm sorry, people. Are you still there?
Hey, Rosa. Yeah, we're still here.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm having some technical problems here and I've lost the screen.
Let's see. If you look down at your taskbar, the Adobe
Right.
Connect icon is like a black box
Yeah,
with
I got it.
four.
I'm sorry about that, people.
No worries, Rosa.
I tried to stop those notifications coming up and then I'll watch it all. But so when you're looking at who else is going to be involved when you're talking about capacity, HUD wants to know that you guys have the experience and the knowledge and that okay, these people know what they're doing and they know how to manage this. So who's going to do your finance? So let's say you're a housing authority, right? And the housing director is massively busy and can't manage this. They can oversee the project maybe, but maybe it's like there's no way I have time to be able to administer this grant and do the procurement and all of this, but they can oversee staff that's involved. So if you have a finance person, again, let's use the example that you're a housing authority for this. So does your finance department have the capacity to do this? Are they already overwhelmed? Do you have too many other programs running? This is where you have a conversation with that finance person, with your board of commissioners, and you just don't make the assumption that because somebody's there that they have the time. Maybe you're short staffed, maybe they need an assistant. So we'll talk about gaps here in a bit, but let's say, for instance, you do have success with that finance person and that finance person can do this. So you're going to name that person, who it is, what it is they do. And let's say that they've worked there for 3 years, but for each year, they have helped manage each one of your IHBGs. And what's on that IHBG? And what are they doing? They're reconciling all of your accounts. They're making sure that they're within compliance of what the funding can actually allow for payments to be expended. They're providing the SF 425s. Are their SF 425s being submitted on time? That's where it's successful. It's also where it's relevant because they're managing the finances for that housing program. They're doing the same thing for this. So if you have that finance person already, you are recent, relevant, and successful, providing that they are relevant and successful. Procurement officer. Most tribes can't afford to have a procurement officer. And so that usually falls back between the project manager, the grant administrator. Finance always is looking at that. But when you're getting ready to go out for bid or all of these things, who's going to do that? So let's take it back up and say that, okay, we're just a little tribe and we don't have a procurement officer. Well, probably Sam is the one that's doing the procurement. So when you go back into the narrative and you're discussing everything that Sam does and how great Sam is and what a great job he has done, if he's going to do procurement, then you're going to talk about that in that narrative part. And you're going to give examples of the procurements. So we know that Sam, based on what we just read, he's got experience. And he's done a lot of, he's already done a lot of projects. They're a force account tribe. And so they're going to do as much of this for within their own tribe that they can. But they've got to go out for bid for electrical. They've got to go out for bid for their plumbing, for their mechanical. Well, who helps develop the scope of work on that? And then who's making sure that it's a sealed bid and that there's pre-bid meeting with with all the contractors that are interested in it? Then that's where you need to discuss. Sam's going to do this. Sam's our guy. And we know that this is part of what is required in this project. And he's the person that's going to do it. If you have a procurement officer, you again want to look at where it's saying recent. Do the same thing. Highlight the years. Let's say that you had the procurement officer the same time that he was there, the same time, or she was there, the same time frame that Sam was. When we're looking at 2020, 2019, 2018, what has been their recent successful things, well, guess what? Now this procurement officer, you're going to do the same things. they did procurement on all these same projects, and you're going to carry it right through that it's relevant, and you're going to have to go out for bid, and you're going to have to make sure all of your procurement standards are met. And then you're going to see the success on it of each one of those projects. How was this procurement officer successful? So when I asked earlier if you went out for contracting, if you're going to administer this, or do you contract your services out? What I meant by services is the administration part of it. So again, let's look at a housing authority. And I really, truly think it is one of the most difficult jobs on the face of the earth. It is massively a lot of work and a lot of diversity, anything from tenants to housing issues themselves, staff turnover, tight budgets, political influence, and do they have time to administer that grant? So maybe you do have a grant administrator. So that is part of what I do for the tribe that I work with. So when I write these grants, I'm already involved in the pre-planning. And I have been involved in many projects that priorities for the tribe have to keep getting changed. They keep getting changed based on the need. But I always have a file, and I never lose sight of someday we're going to do this. And so I'm involved in that pre-planning. It might be 10 years before we can build onto that public facility, but I still know what that need is and what it is we're going to work on. So I've done the pre-planning. Now I'm going to write the grant. Well, then I'm going to do the grant administration. I've seen it come full circle. So that's my role, but I'm not a housing director. So for our housing department, I would be that grant administrator, and I also do the project manager for the position. But can that housing director do that? If you have your housing director and they're going to do that, you need to be listing that. So think of this part of your application. HUD wants to get a visualization of who are you? What have you done? Can you really prove to us that you've done this? Prove it. What have you done? Who's going to do it? And then they're going to be looking at it to see, can they really do that? Are they really demonstrating that they can do it? Just because you hope and think that you can do it, we can go back and look at what we was talking about here with that finance person. Are they overloaded already? Are they filled to the brink with way too much to do? Remember, they still have audits that they've got to prepare for and interact and provide files for and year-end closings and everything. So be realistic, because there's nothing that says that you can't hire somebody to do your financing. There's nothing that says that you can't hire a grant administrator. But the last thing you want is to not identify it and to lose your points. So how does Sam score? Well, he has recent experience in construction management. Now, we said he was going to be the project manager, and he sure has that construction experience. His experience is also relevant to what his position will be as a project manager. He didn't do intake for social services for 15 years and said, you know what, I'd really like to be a construction project manager. Well, you might want to mentor with someone that is first before you can't prove that. And Sam has been successful with completion of projects. I love people like Sam. So what's a weaker example of a financial position? Saul Watterson, financial bookkeeper. Saul is a WHA bookkeeper and was hired in 2020. He has an associate's degree in accounting from the University of Grants RS. Saul will be responsible for processing financial payments such as pay recs and expenditures, tracking the budget, and processing financial status reports. Well, that doesn't look so bad. What does Saul's score look like, though? Saul's experience with financial management appears to be recent, and his education implies that he's required the skill set that's necessary to be able to manage a project financially for this, but it's not stated specifically what he will do, what he does now, and how that applies to this project. So this is where it's easy for all of us to go back and say, when we look at that, it's like, oh yeah, that looks good. But we didn't give anything about recent, right? We didn't say what years he had done what, that his reports were in on time, that he works with the auditors, that their audit reports were clean. Nothing got said with that. So how can we improve Saul's description? Saul will serve as a financial bookkeeper for this project. He has worked for the WHA for 3 years as the bookkeeper. His accounting degree and experience is recent and specific to Indian housing and prepares timely SF 425s. Saul has been successful working with the WHA executive director in developing and maintaining project budgets, such as the 2021 ICDBG and IHBG formula grants. He ensures weekly tribally designated wage rate reports are submitted for each project by all contracts prior to payment. He prepares the annual budget for approval each year, comparing prior year's data and in consultation with maintenance and construction and administrative supervisors. Same guy, said a whole lot differently. So Saul's nailing it. But the way it was first stated, you wouldn't know that Saul was stating it. It sounded good, but you weren't really giving enough information. So how is he nailing it? He prepares interim and final budget to actual expense comparison reports. He's monitoring this. He prepares monthly budget reports for the Board of Commissioners. The SF 425s are filed on time. Transactions for accounts payable, tenant accounts receivable, payroll, adjusted journal entries, and reconciliations are utilized with QuickBooks software. See how specific? How specific. Vendors are paid within 7 to 10 days of receipt of invoices. His trainings include NAHASDA Essentials, NAHASDA Intermediate, Basic Accounting for Tribal Housing, and it goes on to further. You can read this. You don't need me to read this. But you see the difference. And so, again, it is very, very easy for all of us to get so caught up in what it is we're doing. We don't even know how to reiterate what it is we're doing. And then we have people that are phenomenal and can instantly look at a position and what it is they're doing, and boom, they can spit that out. It's like, wow, I wish you'd do it for me. That's really good. So how does Saul score now after we've done this in comparison to the first one to where he's at now? Saul's description demonstrates the activity of his position are the activities necessary to financially manage this project. HUD wants to know your recent experience is going to be relevant to what it is. If we give you this money, you're going to be able to do this. See, we've given them all that information. They demonstrated financial software, reports, the specific financial processes and reports. It's relevant. It's totally relevant to what he's going to have to do if he's awarded this grant. Saul's current responsibilities are recent to what is required to manage this project. He's already doing it. It's recent. It's going to be a walk in the park for him if he has enough time for it. All processing of payments. I'm sorry here. I got lost again. All his payments are done on time. He's demonstrated his successful management of ICDBG, IHBG, and he's successful with timely SF 425s. So we're going to learn as we go on. You keep seeing, why does she keep saying the SF 425s? Because you know what? If you are late on your SF 425, that is a ding against you on your monitoring. And you do not want to lose 1 point, not one. And you're going to. There's very few people I've seen score 100. So you want to make sure that you're identifying everything and that everything is done on time. Make sure to add to his outcomes, SF 425s completed on time, budgets and bank reconciliations completed weekly or monthly. Give dates for each project and identify the outcome.
There was only one man for the job.
And that one man was Saul. So who and what else? So when you're thinking about your project, again, we're thinking that we're probably going to be doing housing rehab, new housing construction, or a public facility. I'm not going into economic development yet, or micro enterprise or anything like that, although that's part of that, and we'll be discussing that in the other rating factors. But right now, we're really basically thinking in terms of housing rehab. So we're going to create and build new housing. Well, if you've managed these grants, then you know you have to do an environmental review. Who's going to do that? Do you have an environmental department? Do you have staff that's completing it? Is it a simple categorical exclusion? What level is this? So if this is something that's going to be required more than a categorical exclusion, are you going to hire this out? Well, you also need to be, so you would identify this again under your gap. So we're going to get down to that, but be thinking about, well, gee, if you're listening, it's like, well, who would do our environmental review? Do you have an environmental department that can do that? Talk with them before you submit this grant. Can they do that? If they can't, talk to your architects and engineers, get an idea of how much that's going to cost. It's totally a legit, well, you have to have your environmental review. It's in it, but it's entirely an acceptable expense. But you need to know this up front. If you can do it, great. If you can't do it, then you need to identify that. So project management. Are you going to contract with an architect and engineering firm that will be completing the project, that's going to be completing the project management? This is a good source to contract. Architects and engineer firms, they know their designs, their process, the sequence of construction and timelines. They evaluate change orders against the schedule of values. And if they're part of the management of the project, you identify them here with what they will be doing. While they are not staff, you are identifying who is doing that project management, their qualifications and tasks. If you don't have that secured yet, you identify it as a gap, unless you don't need an architect and engineering firm for whatever your project is that you're doing. And there's a lot of projects that tribes are doing that they don't need one. What else? Well, who's participating in the post-award training? Identify that. Definitely the finance person and the grant administrator state this. This is part of your process. You're showing HUD that you've thought this whole project through, that you know everything is going to take in order for you to be able to do this job. And so you know you're going to have to participate in that award training. Who's going to do that? Is your housing director going to do it? Is your program manager going to do it? Make sure that you state that. Think your project through. Sometimes we just can't see the forest for the trees. We just do what needs to be done, and we don't recognize that what it is that we're actually doing. We are coordinating, we are reporting, we are identifying, we are budgeting, we are calculating value engineering. Tell it here. Who does what? Sing your song. Sing your praises. Think about what it is you do, or if you're writing it on behalf of the department, what is it that they're going to do? Spell out the outcomes of what you do, not just that you do it. There's a difference. Well, how do I explain a gap in capacity, and what is a gap? Okay, so we're going to go back to this example again. Let's use the example that you have the staff to administer the project, and you realize you need someone in the field to provide on-site management. A suggestion to relate this to in your application could be, the WHA has assessed a gap in our capacity for on-site project management. To fill this gap upon a board, the WHA will advertise this position based on tribal preference and hiring policies of the WHA. This position is identified within the application budget and budget narrative. So what is that role, and what is that role for you? So I've worked on several applications with tribes where that housing director may be the person that's going to be the project manager too, or they're only going to take on that on-site inspection. And they're going to be that person that's going to approve the change orders. So in my situation, I will go to the job site nearly every day. It's keeping the contractors honest because they never know when you're going to show up, and that's always fun. But it also helps you that you can review what is actually happening in comparison to what the design said, or the GC saying, look at this. This is where they've got me putting this, and the toilet paper roll is on the opposite side of the wall. And I'm like, oh my word, you're always going to be cleaning the floor. That's wicked. Now, in this situation, wicked is not good. It means really bad, wicked. But so if you're right there on site, you see it for yourself, you know what's going on, you know that the contractors are working, and the process for a change order would require that you need a formal change order. That architect and engineer needs to draw up a formal change order. They need to send it to you. You've got to sign it. The general contractor's got to sign it. They've got to sign it before they can proceed. So by being on site like this, you've already instantly identified, I've got to do a change order. You're on site. This is a day in a world where we all have cell phones. I take a picture, I send it to the architect and engineer. Hey, can you process this change order for me? This is what it is we've got to do, associate a cost with it, and send that to us. By the time I get back to the office, I can sign it, we can process it. The advantage of this is that you're not delaying the project because the general contractor is now stuck with that part of the project. Okay, I've got to wait. I don't know if they're going to keep it on the other side of the wall. Do I move it? Do I move the cabinets over? What is it they want to do? But you're on site. So that's part of what that project manager does. And this is truly the absolute favorite part of my job. I love doing this. Let's say you don't have any gaps at all. The WHA has not identified any gaps in the capacity of this project and is confident in the administrative task of current staff to absorb and distribute the necessary management of the activities. You just say it, but you have to address gaps. So again, I just reviewed a tribe who'd gotten their application back for the IHBG that was due last January, I believe it was, and they just left it up. They lost a point. A point is worth a lot. And why does this matter? Why does all this matter? Why do they want to know all of this? You're asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions. And in order to demonstrate your ability to manage it, you need to prove that you can. You're being scored on your past and current performance of how you manage the current programs you have. Are you a high risk? We'll get into that one later. Why? Oh, why? Do you get frustrated with all of this? Needing new housing, housing rehab, or a new facility isn't what you're being scored on in this section. Here you're being scored on your ability to manage. You're going to be talking about why you need it under the needs section. But under this section, they want to know that you know what it is you're doing. Don't let emotion and need for your project make you think that all the major reasons, these will be all the major reasons you're going to get funded. You have to demonstrate your capacity, your checks and balances, and that you are in compliance and experience to comprehend and implement the project. Think of it as a loan. So if you're going to go apply for a car loan, and the bank is going to pull a credit report on you, and they're going to check your credit worthiness. This is what this is doing. They're checking your worthiness. But you say, here's my pay stub. See, I make enough money. But the bank doesn't bank on that alone, do they? They pull a credit report, and they see that you owe more than you make on your credit cards. You're late on all your payments, and you're high risk. If the credit report shows that you're not managing your money well, the bank isn't going to give you a loan for a new car, even though you need a new car to go to work. Well, HUD's not going to give you $1 million because your housing stock is deteriorated unless you can prove through your past and your current experience that you can manage it. Is your program creditworthy? I think we've got a question in here. Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate your responses. I really do. So I'm going to let you know that this is so critical that everyone is in compliance and doing their jobs. And how many of you, this isn't a poll question, but how many of you work with someone whose reports are always late, who the auditors have showed up and they're not ready for them, who had to reschedule the pay rec meetings with the contractors? They're just always procrastinating. Well, it's one thing to procrastinate, but it's another when it affects your credit worthiness. Our credit worthiness here as a tribe is being able to make sure that we are in compliance, that our reports, our monitoring reports, when HUD comes and does this with us, when our audit reports are due, you are going to get dinged. This is what I mean by credit worthiness. It's not credit worthiness in the sense of how much money you have in the bank and how much money you have for leverage. It's, are you worthy as far as how you manage the funds that you have right now? And if you're not doing it well, you are going to lose points. We all are. I don't mean you particularly. We are going to lose points. This is designed this way. They want to make sure that you are worthy. So that leads me into audit submissions. See how much that's worth? 4 points is a lot of points. This is a lot of points. And what we're seeing right now, and especially because of COVID, is that a lot of people got extensions. But then after their extension had exceeded its time frame, they still didn't get their audit reports in. It doesn't matter what it is you say here. It didn't get your audit in, right? What if you have audit findings? Well, this is where your audit's going to be sent to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, and HUD does look this up. They will review it. So you can't, you might as well address what the issues are and come up with your corrective action plans if you have findings, and get this addressed immediately, because they will see it. There's no hiding it. So this is basically just the language that comes out of the NOFA as far as what it is that we need to do. Just explains what it is. I said this is about the COVID extension. And how are you evaluated? You notice I have a nice bottle of Tums there. If you haven't figured out, I'm a type A woman, and I'm always a bundle of nerves. And you can't control everybody, but I'm always following through with everybody, especially on that project management and grant administration, because it's like, this report is due. This report is due. Where is the report? Can you give me that financial statement so that I can reconcile it against this? If people don't understand the importance, and that's why I asked the question, do you think your tribe understands? Because if your housing director or your finance person blows stuff off and doesn't get it done, this affects your ability to be able to get funding. It doesn't mean you can't, but it means that now your score is going to be reduced significantly. And it is, I've been doing this with the tribes now for 20 years, and this is the most competitive I have ever seen it. So you do not want to lose any points at all. Those audits. Oh gosh. So we've already addressed the audit findings. There I am. I'm pulling my hair out.
We are coming for you.
And that is exactly what it feels like. More on the audit. And how are your points calculated? So you get 4 points. There were no open single audit. HUD's Office for the Inspector General and the U.S. Government and Bill Accountability Office. Findings related to HUD, nor findings related to financial management, accounting, and internal controls. Look at all of this. So stay in touch with, keep that heartbeat going, and you may be working on something else, but Find out where you're at with your audit. Find out where you're at if you're a housing authority, if you manage your ICDBGs. Did you have to apply for an extension? Did you get the work done that needed to be done? Did you get your audits completed? Did you have monitoring finding? All these things truly, truly matter. See why it's so important to manage your funding? However you manage your funding. So if a tribe is late in submitting their Indian housing plan, if they're late in getting their APRs done, if their APRs don't match their Indian housing plan, if they didn't get their SF 425s in, guess what? That all comes into this. This is your audit, but it also comes into your monitoring. So let's see, how are we doing here for time? I've still got plenty of time, right? So under this is dry. This is procurement and contract management, and I don't want to minimize anyone here who is experienced with this program, and I'm not going to read this verbatim. I'm going to summarize. But when you come to this section under this, you pay very, very, very close attention, because they're telling you 24 CFR 1003.501. You best be talking about how that applies to you. Every single one of these. And I've gotten caught on this because it gets excessive. And then you're thinking about your page count. It's like, well, good grief, I'm never going to be able to write what I want to write, because all I'm doing is regurgitating to them what it is they're telling us we're supposed to be doing. Well, I lost a couple of points because I thought I'm just going to pick out the major ones and hope they aren't going to notice. I still got funded, but I didn't like that I lost the points, and you learn a lesson from that. Learn from me or whatever. If you don't understand what that regulation is, and here's the thing, they've changed the titles on some of these, and they want you to make sure that you've got the right number with the right title, and you could be saying the right thing, and then this is how you're managing that, but you use the wrong title number. So guess what? You lose a point. Applicable requirements include, and so here we go with the bonding requirements and your Indian and tribal preference, your conflict of interest. You can't just say, well, we're going to follow Indian and tribal preference, and we have a conflict of interest policy. You've got to explain how you apply that and who does. It's a good place to say who does this. For this project, this is who's going to be following through with this, and how do you do your Indian and tribal preference. So they're also telling you, don't just send your conflict of interest policy, tell us how that is involved. Full point. For full points, the application must address each of the regulatory requirements. So remember how I told you I thought I'd try to be sneaky, and I wanted my space under my needs section, and yeah, I paid for that. So they're saying you have to do this with every single one of your every single one of those regulations that they're telling you. So in my presentation that I had last week, and I push and push and push and push and push, I cannot encourage you enough for how imperative that pre-planning is. Look, you can, so ICDBG was due last week. Nothing is keeping you from starting your next ICDBG. We don't know when that's going to be. I would say it's probably going to be July or August next year based on how their cycles go, but we don't know. Nothing is preventing you at all from starting your application, and you can get this section done. You don't even need to know what it is your project is going to be, but you can download, you can get your format together, you can start putting some of these pieces together, and this is a standard thing that has to be in there. Close out the application, save it, you're done in this section. So again, I'm telling you, this is not optional. I learned my lesson with that. Pay attention to every single solitary thing in that NOPA. Read it, read it, read it. Then after you write that section, go back and read again for that section under capacity, Did I say this? Is it recent? Is it relevant? Not just that you're answering it to yourself. Look at it from an objective point of view and say, well, does it really, am I just implying that it's recent? Because if you say, well, recently they rehabbed 56 units. Well, recently for some people could be 10 years ago. HUD recent is 5 years. So give, in 2020, we rehabbed 56 units. Oh, let's see. So an example, pay requisitions for general contractors are reviewed with the AE firm, on-site project manager and program director in comparison to work completed, materials used, and the required schedule of values submitted with the pay requisition. A signature of approval on the pay rec is required from the AE firm, general contractor, and on-site project manager. So remember when I was telling you about being in the field and I could see that we needed an immediate change order and I didn't want the process, the construction to slow down just because we've got to wait for me to get to the office, whatever. It's the same here for your pay rec. So your pay rec, that architect and engineer is going, and they want to know how you're doing this. This is where we're coming from. So it's like, okay, so in general, when we have our construction meeting for our pay rec meeting, that AE firm is going to have that pay rec ahead of time. They're going to review that against the schedule of values of the materials that are used, the materials that are being stored. Yes, that's the right percentage. No, that is not. You're going to be reviewing, making sure that the general contractor has provided you the payroll backup for the Davis-Bacon wages or whatever, and who's signing these. So this is demonstrating that under this regulation, this is how you're adjusting to that. You're responding to how your tribe is doing it instead of just saying, yes, we comply with this regulation. You're not going to get the points for that. So let's say it's 200-325 bonding requirements. WHA's current policies stipulate the following methods to provide performance and payment assurance before notice to proceed is issued. The general contractor must provide proof of performance, bid, and payment bonds consistent with the warranty period commensurate with potential risk and compliance with the procedure for monitoring. I don't know about you, but this is the part of the grant that I really don't like. I understand why HUD wants it, but you're getting excited. It's like, I just want to write about this, and this is going to be so great, and we do this already. But you know what? Yeah, got to do it. So we've already discussed why you've got to get your first four, your 4 points. So for your disbursement, so there, let's see if I have that on the next. Okay. So for your disbursements, if you are, okay, I can give you an example of a tribe that I worked with, and this was a problem for them because they had a project in the pipeline that they knew that they were going to obligate several $1 million towards. But it never could, that project could never get off of the ground, be it because of tribal priorities and who was going to do what yet. And they were going to use that to match for something else. But if you look at this next slide, so if you have it, go down to that bottom row there, if you have 80% or more of your funding in your LOCS account, you're not going to get any points on this. And we pre-score an application before we go ahead and put it in. You should know this about your program. So it's the same for ICDBG. So this would be LOCS for a house. What the example I just gave you would be for a housing department. But concurrently, I could have 3 ICDBG projects that I've got open, and I'm managing 2 that are active construction, and I have a third one, but I can't get that third one off the ground yet because I'm in northern Maine. We got awarded, let's say we got awarded in the fall. Well, now I can't do my environmental because I've got to do soil borings in order to be able to do that. Well, our ground is still frozen in April. So now I've got 6 months or so that I'm setting with that money in the bank to HUD. It looks like, well, they're going to start this project or not. Well, of course, when I give my ACER reports, I'm going to explain what's going on. But even though I've got 2 active ICDBGs and a third one that's I'm not being able to manage right now, Oh, now I'm going to submit a fourth one. Oh, I can't wait. I just can't wait. I can't wait to do this project. This is going to be a fun one. I sat back and I look and I was like, geez, well, I've got 50% less in this one. I've got more than 35% in this other ICDBG, and I've got 100% in the other one. So I'm going to pre-score my application, and I'm going to know I'm not going to get any points on this. But I'm still going to apply. But when I look at this application, I'm going to score and say, yeah, we're not going to get that one. Timely reporting, I've already got on my soapbox about that, and it's one of my biggest levels of frustration because you can preach to the choir and keep saying this is so important that this report gets in on time. You realize that we're going to lose points when we go to apply for more funding if you're like, oh yeah, I know. Well, no, it's not. You can't just say, yeah, and then don't do anything about it. 3 points is a lot of points. I think 2 points is a lot of points. You don't want to be the one where the funding stopped at a 92. That was the lowest score that got funded, and you got a 90. Maybe you could have gotten a 93, right? You want to be as competitive as possible. You want to know what it is you're dealing with, because there's a lot of tribes that excel at putting these things together. They excel. They have the staff to manage. And if your staff is not managing, including yourself, you're hurting your chances for funding. Again, I'm on the soapbox about the reports, but this is part of it. Remember, there I am, mad as an old wet hen with my whistle, and I'm screaming at everybody to get their reports in on time because it affects us. Your closeout reports is the same thing. Please give me the last SF 425. Please, what happened with this? Where are you at? Let's get this. And it's not hard to do. It's just that sometimes people just procrastinate. But look at that, 2 points for your closeout. Did you do it on time? If you didn't, you're supposed to be asking for an extension, and you submit them and you explain to them what the issues are, which many times here in Northern Maine, because of our climate, we have to do this. I mean, it's beyond our control. It's not like, well, we don't know if we're going to hire somebody or if we're going to manage this. We haven't figured out yet. We'll let you know when we do. It's not that way. So those closeout reports with the SF 425s, how crucial that is. Monitoring findings. You can run, but you cannot hide. Sorry, I haven't got that. And we all work with somebody who does this, right? It's like, is it the wrestler? Who was that wrestler? Cena, was it? That would do the hands in front of his face. You can't see me. Like, I can see you. And I know darn well we get a monitoring finding on this. And it sounds like I'm just a micromanager. I mean, I am not these people's supervisors. But if I'm the one that's writing the grant, you cannot expect a grant writer to get you a grant if on your level of accountability, you're blowing this stuff off. And you're not being held accountable, and you got findings on your audits, and your monitoring findings are the findings that HUD's got issues with. HUD is going to check every single one of these things out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So develop your team, find out where they're at, ask. So if you're new to your position and you're writing a grant for the tribe, research the tribe's past performance. So our tribe, we've done a lot with public facilities. Well, then I switch back over and nope, we're not going to do the tribe this year. We're going to do housing. So then you switch back over there, but it's the same thing. So if we're applying for a public facility, that's going to now be under the tribe. It's not going to be under the housing authority. I have to know when I'm writing this grant, what is the tribe's past performance, and where are their audits clean? Are they getting their reports in on time? Are our bank reconciliations being done on time? Are the funds being spent within the 3 days after they're drawn down? If you're new to the housing program and you're a housing director or you're a grant writer for them, whatever your capacity, Immediately find out where you stand with your Indian housing plans and your annual performance reports, and are they submitted on time? Here's the thing. They can tell you that they submitted it, but many times they're kicked back for clarification. You need to know that. They need to know that. Housing commissioners need to know this. Don't make that assumption. Do they have any voluntary compliance agreements? Did they get any letters of warning? These are really, really big red flags. If you can't find any evidence in the office, reach out to your HUD grant specialist and ask. You need to know who your audience is and who it is that's going to be managing this, so that when you put this together, you have confidence, or if you know there's problems, you're going to address that. Yes, we had a finding in this category on our audit report. We established a corrective action plan and it was resubmitted, and give the information, you address it. Hiding doesn't change it. So you're going to get 2 points if you didn't have any HUD or EWONAP monitoring findings. And again, this is just how the scoring is played out. 0 points. Boy, that would burn me. So stop and score yourself. It's like I've been saying all along. Find out where you're at. So before you write a grant, really look at all of these things. You can see what the value is beside each one of these. In your notebook, it tells you how many points you get. Oh yeah, we can get 8 points for managerial. Gee, Rosa's a crackerjack. She always gets her reports in on time and whatever. Well, right. But let's say I'm doing the project for housing, and housing has audit findings. Maybe housing didn't submit their audit. Maybe they have monitoring findings. Maybe they still haven't submitted their IHP. That's going to affect the score on that grant. So find out ahead of time. Figure out your managerial and technical staff, your audit submission, your audit findings. If nothing else, it gives you an assessment up front to say, okay, well, most we could get on audit submissions is 4 points, and I know we're not going to get that. I'm going to lose 4 points there. I'm going to lose 4 points on audit findings. So there's 8 points. Wow, that's already got me down to a 92. If I know that I'm not going to be able to get anything on the other end for preference points, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to look online. I'm going to see, well, what was the cutoff last year? What was the lowest score that they did last year? I was like, oh, it was a 92. And it's like, okay, that doesn't mean that that's the cutoff. It means that once they ran out of money, that the lowest score that got in there and got scored is what I'm saying was the 92. Now you're looking at this, you're pre-assessing before you write the grant. And you're like, holy cow, that's not really good. 92 points. I can't lose any points any place else in this application. I've got to get 100% of 92 points. And this is also where it gives you heartburn, because then you realize, well, gee whiz, if you guys would have gotten your audit in, and if you wouldn't have had any audit findings, we'd have 8 points right there. And so you can't say that, but I say it under my breath a whole lot. There's steam that comes out of my head. So your procurement and contract management, that's worth 4 points. Make sure that you've identified every single regulation, as I stated, your disbursements. So again, in my situation that I gave you an example of, which exactly happened, I had 3 open ICDBGs. And due to how the construction worked out, there's nothing I could have done. It's not like I made a mistake. There was nothing I could do to change that. That doesn't change that I'm going to lose points. I'm not going to lose points on my closeout, my monitoring, my findings. I'm not going to, my timely reporting, but I'm going to lose those 3 points on the disbursements. So let's say we go back and we know that we have an audit finding, or we have a monitoring finding, and you add that to this. Well, pretty soon you're doing your calculation. It's like, I don't know that we're really going to be fundable. You need to be aware of where you're at in your tribe. So, are you having fun yet? You're well on your way. I was at a tribal council meeting one time, and someone said, Well, ICBG is just a fill in the blank application. Yeah, it so is not. So I will open the floor now to you. I would like your feedback. I know this is dry, and part of the thing with virtual is I can't see you, you don't see me. I don't know if you're working on a report right now. I don't know how this is effective, but I really do appreciate your impact, and I do want your input, anything that you have. But if you have a specific question, or if you've got a situation that's going on and you're wondering how to manage that, you can ask for my contact information and reach out to me, and I would be happy to offer you whatever information I can. I just really, this is the best program for tribes there is. And I want everybody to be successful in it. Unless, of course, you're competing against me, and then I hope I get more points than you because I'm wicked competitive. I'll pass it back to you, Brooke.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosa. Always a good time during your webinars. We really appreciate your time and effort with the presentation. As I close out today's webinar, guys, if you are having any lingering questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I did already launch today's survey when she first had brought up feedback. So please take a moment to fill that in for us. It takes like maybe a minute or two, and then it really helps us to do more of what is working and to tweak what maybe needs it. And we do invite you to be as candid as you would like. The survey is anonymous, so just provide your input, please. We appreciate you. There's a link up again. And once more, I'm just going to copy and put it into the chat. That is the link to our survey. And we hope you guys can join us for our next webinar. That is going to be next week on October 17th. And this one's on self-monitoring for federal grant recipients. So that one's going to be a good one as well. And registration is free as always. Feel free to access this and any of our other recorded webinars online on our website, nativelearningcenter.com. We have a tab labeled Cathedra Webinars, and it has a whole recorded webinars section. So you can click on any one of the webinars that we've done for the past 2 years. Feel free to view them, share them with your colleagues. And I have also provided the link to Rosa's previous webinar from last week, where she went over all the wonderful things that you can do project-wise with the grant monies. I'm going to place that link into the chat again. And Rosa, it looks like we have a question from Nancy. And Nancy's asking, how do you go about ensuring the rest of the grant team is timely without causing a toxic environment? Sometimes people don't like being told what to do. That is so true, Nancy.
Nancy, you made me laugh and grin when I read that, and you're absolutely right. And so, yes, like when I'm talking to you, I'm uptight about it, but I've seen the repercussions of it. So how my original approach is meeting with the team, explaining to them, I will show them the grant application and that this is how this is scored and this is how this is really important to us, right? And so then when I'm doing the administration and I ask them, did you get that SF 425 done yet? No, I got that on my desk. I'm going to get at that. Well, okay. So then you wait another week and it's still not coming in. I get testy with it. It's not testy because it's just me. It's testy because they're hurting the tribe. You're hurting your ability to apply. And so sometimes the toxicity isn't about the person who is trying to ensure that things are being met. The toxicity is the person who's not doing their job. And there is a difference, Nancy. I understand exactly what it is you're saying. And you have to be kind and gentle about it. But I'm predominantly making reference to the people who just refuse to get it done. And it does cost you your ability to be competitive. And you're working for the tribe. You're serving the community. And so you've got to do your due diligence. But yes, I probably am pretty feisty about it, but it's because of this. And then when you see your score or you see how another tribe lost out, this is why I asked the question. Does your tribe, does your staff understand the importance of these things? And if they don't, it's an educational opportunity. But it also reflects back on if you don't get awarded, then you've got to prove that to your commissioners or your tribal council, your tribal chief. You're going to have to show them that score. That person doesn't want to be the reason why you didn't get funded. And they certainly, if you've got to back it up with the emails where you've asked for it, they're not going to have a leg to stand on. But it really is about the tribe. It's not about us as individuals. We're hired to do a job. I hope that helped.
Yep, Nancy had said thank you. And educate. You also have some love from Beverly in the chat. She said very good information and that she is a former HUD GM specialist, 35 years with Southwest ONAP.
Well, thank you, Beverly.
Yep, she said she's reviewed many grant applications, now is a grant writer, and she said this is probably the best training on how to address Factor 1. Highly recommend, even if it helps some of her competitors. Oh my gosh, Beverly, that's so lovely.
That makes me feel good. You made my day, Beverly.
Absolutely. And Angelina, I will absolutely send you the slides. That's not a problem. If anybody else is needing them, just let me know in the chat and I will, I'll send them to you and I'll loop Rosa in on the email as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Absolutely. I wish you great success. And it's Friday the 13th and nothing bad happened.
Yes.
Have a wonderful weekend and good luck with your applications. I'll see you next week.
You as well, Rosa.
Thank you.
Beverly, if you could do me a favor and just put your email into the chat, I can send you the slides as well. Lukai, I see yours. You will be on my list, no problem. And I'm going to hang back for a second if anybody else wants to include their email, if you would like to receive a PDF copy of the slides. And again, I'll loop Rosa into that email as well.
And please feel free to reach out to me. You'll have my contact information if you've got a question or a concern or whatever. I'm willing to help you.
All right. I don't see anybody else typing. Oh, Maggie, I see your email as well. No problem. All right. Everybody have a fantastic rest of the day. We can't wait to connect with you again real soon.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you for the next webinar.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Rosa. Thank you so much.